What's going on, Fragrance family? It's your man Gator, better known as the Novice Nose out here in these fragrance streets. You know, every once in a while there's a fragrance that comes along and just sets this community on fire. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody and their mama got an opinion on this thing. It's usually divisive. Some people love it, some people hate it. But you know, that's just the way it is here in the fragrance community. The latest such fragrance is this guy right here. This is Afnon's Rare Reef. Now, I did a first impressions on this fragrance a couple of weeks back, and since then I've had a lot of time to spend with it. As you can tell by the dent that's in this bottle, man. I've got some good opinions, some bad opinions, and I got some opinions that are a little bit off of the beaten path of everything else that's been out there, because I've had a chance to see a lot of people's thoughts on this fragrance. Well, now I'm going to show you my full thoughts on the fragrance. We're not even gonna take it to the table, man. Come on, bring it to the wall. Let's get this thing done, man. Let's go ahead, pull up, and stay tuned. Now again, the fragrance that we're talking about today is this guy right here. Again, this is Afnon's Rare Reef. Now, this is supposedly an inspiration of, or inspired by, the house that shall not be named, Pacific Chill. And it is very much that. It is very much an inspiration, not a one-to-one. Now let's get into the fragrance notes on this thing. I'm gonna actually use the phone today, not gonna be using the computer here. So, top notes on this thing are blackcurrant, citron, mint, orange, grapefruit, and coriander. Middle notes are apricot, violet leaf, rose, and basil. And then in the base you got fig, amberwood, ambrette, and dates. So it pretty much mirrors the notes in Pacific Chill, with a couple of, you know, minor exceptions in here. Now, bottle-wise, of course, you guys have seen this a million times now. You've seen that dent probably a million times too, because a lot of people really like this fragrance. A lot of people are talking about it. Let me get a good spray off the atomizer here to kind of show that thing off. Decent, nice puffy coverage, but not something that's, you know, so spectacular you want to write home about it. Now, you guys have probably heard everything there is to hear about this fragrance already, so I'm not going to just dwell into a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be repetitive to all of the other messaging and everything that you've heard out there, but I will tell you what I get from it. So when you spray it on initially in the air, you're going to get a definite flashback to Pacific Chill. You're gonna get that apricot fruitiness that's going on in here. You're also gonna get that mint factor in here. Now, the fruitiness is dialed down from the way that Pacific Chill is. Pacific Chill's fruity nature is a little bit brighter, a little bit juicier. This comes across a little bit more subdued, it's pulled back. And then the kind of replacement of that, you get more of the coriander, that spiciness in here. It also comes across a little bit more airy at the top than the original does. So that's one of the first like differentiations between that original fragrance that it's inspired by and the way that this presents. Now, one of the things that I get with this one that I don't get with that original Pacific Chill DNA here is a little bit more of a green nature on this one, man, and a little bit more of an herbaceousness. As it gets into that like hour, like maybe like half an hour of the dry down here, you start getting more of a herbaceous type of pop here, and I believe that's actually coming from like the basil in here. It's giving that type of like rosemary spice, and along with that coriander, it definitely gives this thing a more spicy green lean than you would get in the original Pacific Chill. Now, going on into maybe that hour or so into it, the mint starts to kind of subside and you're getting left with more just the herbaceousness. Now, this is another differentiation between what this is and what the original DNA is, where the original DNA still kind of has some of the fruity pop going down into like that hour, 2 hour, 3 hour mark. This one starts to lose a good bit of the mint, a good bit of that fruitiness, and it really starts to focus on the green nature in there. And then you also get kind of like almost an aquatic style of the fragrance, or facet of the fragrance that starts to come out around that hour to hour and a half mark. And that's really kind of what you're getting for the rest of the way. You don't really revisit the standard procedure that you would with Pacific Chill. The way that thing progresses is not the way that this progresses. This goes in a different direction here. It goes more into an herbaceous aquatic mode as opposed to what Pacific Chill does, where it actually starts to get a little bit of a sweet undertone from the dates and everything in it. And that's what makes me think that this is more of just an inspired opening of Pacific Chill, and then it kind of goes its own way, then a one-to-one with Pacific Chill in the way that it dries down and the way that it progresses throughout the life of the fragrance. Now, going to that 2 to 3 hour mark here, you're basically getting that green herbaceousness going on in there. It's definitely still got a little bit of the spiciness to it. It's definitely got a little bit of that airy / aquatic kind of vibe to it. You start picking up a little bit more of the muskiness going on in here. It's not like a clean, powdery style of musk, but it is something that is definitely giving a little bit of a green, clean kind of factor going into the further dry down. And that's really the story about how this thing progresses. Like I said, it doesn't progress like the OG fragrance. It definitely has its own thing that it starts doing, like literally around that hour to hour and a half mark, which, like I said, makes me think it's more of an inspired opening of Pacific Chill, and then going its own way than a Pacific Chill inspiration all throughout the life. So, speaking of the life, this is probably the most divisive part of this fragrance, because I keep hearing people say, oh, this lasted 8 to 12 hours on my skin and it is just like projecting, it's booming off of my skin in hour 8. And then you hear people that say, man, it's like giving me like 3 to 4 hours and then that's about it. Not really getting much after that. So a lot of this is happening because of one specific variation from what the original is. And that's the introduction of Violet Leaf. Now, if you know how Violet Leaf kind of acts in different fragrances, what it does when you put it in a fragrance, and I don't know if this is just something that perfumers put Violet Leaf in a fragrance to do, but it does it here. What it does is that even when your fragrance starts to kind of soften up on projection, it allows your fragrance to maintain that airy nature to it, and it almost increases your sillage. So many times you'll be able to be smelled, from behind you better than you are from in front of you. So it'll literally leave like a scent trail. So a lot of people, when they're wearing this fragrance, in that 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th hour, they're turning around, they're moving around a little bit, and that Violet Leaf is doing its job, man. And you're getting these little subtle pops of the fragrance that are kind of popping up here. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole chemical makeup and what chemical does this and all this kind of stuff. Just know that most of the chemical that they use for Violet Leaf usually has that kind of effect on a fragrance, at least from my experience with different fragrances that I've had. For example, this guy right here, Ted Lapidus Poker Face, and by default to that, La Nuit de l'Homme has that same style of effect, and it uses that Violet Leaf to do it. So I think that's why there's a little bit of a divisiveness going on. The other thing is that other people's, some people's skin are different. Their spray routine can be different. All of those things can be different. I will say that for me, I'm getting somewhere in the range of skin of about maybe 5 to 6 hours. And I'm not counting when I have to put my nose to it and, you know, because at that point I'm like literally straining my nostrils just to smell it. Okay, I'm counting as far as like if I can hold up my hand and kind of smell it. I'm getting somewhere in the range of about 5 to 6 hours. On clothes, I'm getting somewhere in that range of about 7 to 8 hours. So it is there. It's not like a monster projector though after like that first hour or so. So once you get past the mintiness and the fruitiness, it kind of, once it gets into this aquatic bag, it starts to become more of a skin scent. So by the time it gets into its musky vibe, it's already kind of a skin scent, but it will still have a decent sillage. So when you walk by people, they'll be able to pick you up. Overall, I think this is a very solid fragrance. It's actually a very strong life, near I say love for me as far as the fragrance is. Now, utility wise, I think it'll be great for any summer collection, spring, fall. It's not going to be a winter scent. You're going to get 3 seasons out of this and barely the end of fall on this. Some of the hype that's been going around on this fragrance though has been super ridiculous. Like, there's definitely it almost seems like a concerted effort to make sure that this fragrance is like on the tip of everybody's tongue. Well, I mean, that's what a good marketing program is supposed to do, and I guess that's why you see it so much. But as all in all, I think it's a very solid fragrance. I would rate it pretty high as far as, you know, utility. I think it's definitely worth a buy. So if you're into that Pacific Chill DNA, I think that you'll like this, but you won't love it. If you're used to wearing the OG Pacific Chill, this one might disappoint you a little bit because it's only that for that first hour and a half to 2 hours, and then it kind of goes into like a musky style of aquatic, a green style of aquatic fragrance here. So if you're not into, if you're really into Pacific Chill, you may have a little bit of an issue with that. But if you need something that's going to be kind of a variation, and you're good with variation on that Pacific Chill DNA, and some people may actually prefer that aquatic vibe that it gives as it goes into the dry down, it wouldn't be redundant to have this and any other Pacific Chill inspiration in your collection, because like I said, as it goes into that hour or so, they do different things. Heck, at the opening, it actually does something different because it's a bit spicier, and also the fruit is subdued. So it kind of comes across a little bit greener, a little bit, dare I say, more masculine than a lot of the other inspirations. Overall, I think it's a great fragrance. I am going to definitely get some wear out of this, more wear than I even have in here. As much as I can get out of this. I got backup bottles of this, by the way, and we'll get into that another time. But I think this is a great fragrance, man. I don't want to rate it, but I will say that this is a fragrance that is definitely worth a buy, worth checking out. And hey, you might actually fall in love with it like a lot of my subscribers have already. Trust me, I hear it all the time, guys. That's all I got on this particular fragrance, guys. If you put your nose on it, let me know in the comments. And as always, guys, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, share this video with someone you know that loves fragrances. And as always, guys, remember, whatever you're doing, however you're doing it, make sure you make today the best day ever, on purpose. Peace out.